The great storm that descended upon the English countryside that summer was for many people the worst in living memory. It swept across the whole country with devastating effect. Walls collapsed in its path, chimney pots and roof slates took to the air, trees fell like ninepins. Sadly, the Folly Brook did not escape this mighty onslaught, nor the three gnomes aboard the ill-fated Dragonfly. With her sails swept away, the boat lurched drunkenly through the heaving waves, while Dodder and Sneezewort sprawled in the bilges, too ill to move. Baldmoney, barely conscious, was propped up by the mast. He saw only the angry waves close by. Beyond them, an inky darkness, and what was that? For a second, he thought he'd seen something else. Or was it just his eyes playing tricks? No. There it was again, a dark shape looming above, and a giant wave fell upon the Dragonfly. This is the end, thought Baldmoney. Then came the crash. For a moment, Baldmoney lay in the boat wondering what had happened, for despite the wind and waves, the boat seemed not to be moving. He pulled himself up and peered through the spray once more, and saw before him a most wonderful sight. A shingle beach, rocks and overhanging trees. They had been washed ashore. To this day, I do not know how Baldmoney managed it, but somehow in that blinding storm, he dragged both Dodder and Sneezewort up the beach and into cover under the roots of an old tree. Then he himself collapsed beside them, utterly exhausted. The morning after the storm, and with the dawn came bright sunlight and warmth, and the gnomes slept on. The mighty winds and angry waves were gone now. In their place, a warm summer breeze and gentle water lapping on the shore. The wreckage of the storm was everywhere. Uprooted trees were sprawled across the land, and the shoreline was littered with debris. But though their lives had been spared, little did the still sleeping gnomes realize their predicament now. For not only was there no sign of the Dragonfly, but they had been cast ashore, not on the mainland, but on a small island. By midday, the gnomes were up and about and taking stock of the situation. Their sodden clothes hung from a nearby tree to dry, and on the ground before them were laid out their only possessions. One knife, one sleeping bag, one fishing line and hook. Everything else had been lost in the storm. "And we'll never see the Dragonfly again," said Sneezewort. "I found a few of her timbers on the beach. She must have broken up during the night." "And we've no food," put in Dodder. "Oh dear, oh dear." "I suggest we search the island thoroughly," said Baldmoney, taking command of the situation. "Sneezewort and I can go in opposite directions around the shore looking for food or anything useful, and you, Dodder, go over the hill in the middle. Then we'll meet up on the other side." And so they set off, with old Dodder taking the middle course up the slope. And he mumbled and grumbled to himself as his wooden leg was playing up a bit and made the climbing tricky. It was as he came to the top of the slope, however, that his attention was caught by a buzzing sound. A buzzing which gradually grew louder and nearer. Then, above him, he saw a wild bee on the branch of a tree. Above it, another. And above that, a constant procession of bees coming and going from a hole in the trunk. Dodder chuckled to himself. Where there are bees, he thought, there's honey. So taking out their one and only knife, he prepared to raid the nest. Baldmoney and Sneezewort, meanwhile, had completed their search of the shoreline. It appears the island is without inhabitants or food, remarked Baldmoney dejectedly. Did you find anything? Nothing, replied Sneezewort. It's as if the storm blew every living creature, large and small, right off the island. It was then that they too heard the buzzing of wild bees. But this time, it was an angry sound. They turned towards it. By the great God, Pan, look at that, remarked Baldmoney. There above them hovered a great, dark, angry swarm of bees from which protruded a pair of legs. And then the legs began to run. It was only when this strange apparition stopped in front of them that Baldmoney and Sneezewort saw old Dodder in the middle. He was grinning from one big ear to the other, his beard smothered in sweet, sticky honey and bees, and in his arms a mass of golden honeycomb. The fact that the bees were furious at what had happened in no way spoiled the gnome's mood. All three were stung time and time again, but they felt nothing. They were as impervious to bee stings as badgers. An hour later, their hunger satisfied, the gnomes held a conference on the highest point of the island. Away beyond the glittering waters of the lake, they could clearly see the fields and woods of the mainland, which came right down to the water's edge. The great problem was how to get there. I don't think we have any choice, said old Dodder. Even if we got word to the mainland, I don't see how anyone could rescue us, and it's certainly too far to swim. All we can do is to build some sort of raft. And how do you suggest we make a raft? Asked Sneezewort. Well, we have the fishing line, answered Dodder. Let's look for some timbers which we can tie together. It might work. Because of the storm, finding driftwood was no great problem. Odd bits of wood of every shape and size were lying all along the beach, and the gnomes had soon assembled some old planks and branches, which they lashed together with the fishing line. I suggest we set off first thing in the morning, remarked Dodder. If it floats, and I'll soon find out if it does. And while Baldmoney and Sneezewort looked on, Dodder sat himself upon the raft and pushed out from the shore. It seemed to float very well, and to be a most stable craft, as Dodder, his legs dangling in the water, poled himself along. Looks good, remarked Baldmoney, but I wonder if it'll carry the... Look out! Behind you! Dodder turned and saw behind him a monstrous pike with small, evil eyes and vicious teeth. In an instant, it was upon him. Dodder! It all happened so quickly. 1 minute Dodder was there, next minute he was gone. And all that remained were a few floating planks and a circle of ripples spreading across the surface of the water. The two gnomes stared aghast for a moment. Then they broke down and wept. They wept as they had never wept before. For Dodder, dear old Dodder, was gone. Baldmoney and Sneezewort were beset with grief. Instead of finding Cloudberry, they had lost Dodder. Dodder, who all along had warned them of the dangers. They would undoubtedly have cried the whole night through, had it not been for the voice which suddenly called, Well, I shan't set off on a raft again in a hurry. There, to their utter astonishment and joy, they saw Dodder on the beach before them. "By the great God, Pan! Oh, that was a close thing," he remarked. "And may it teach that pike a lesson. You see, he grabbed me by the leg. But it was my wooden leg which snapped off. So I swam clear, and now that fish has my leg stuck in his mouth."